All right, welcome to Destination the Show, episode 21. Jeremy Nygaard, this is not our normal recording time, buddy. How are you?
I'm good. Monday nights are typically a little more busy, and then I walk off a basketball court to a Jeff Passan. Twins have agreed to trade Jorge Polanco, and it was like, oh, we found something else to do tonight.
We have been waiting all off season for this. Super excited to bring our first ever kind of emergency episode of DTS. This is the Jorge Polanco is traded to Seattle episode. First of all, that just sounds wrong, doesn't it? Kind of.
It does, and then the when the Mariners tweeted out the trade, they had like the photoshopped picture of Polanco,
Oh,
which was different too. So it is. It's weird. Jorge Polanco's been a Twin since 2009.
yep,
That's a long time to be in an organization. So,
yep.
I mean that's the bittersweet part of being a fan of a team, right? Your players that you're used to all of a sudden are no longer the players. But hey, Polanco and Garv together.
You gotta wonder how Max Kepler is feeling right now, man. I'm remembering back to their playoff run press conference in Houston and his like heartwarming kind of aside to Polanco in front of the media about how proud he was to have like played with him for all those years. That has to be tough. But we are excited to dig in, man. So we are going to talk about this trade for the next 45 minutes. We will start with a full rundown. We'll do some initial reactions. Then we're going to go player by player from the Twins side. This is Destination the show, so we're going to give particular attention to the two prospects that the Twins picked up in this trade. So let's dive right in, man. Full trade. Jorge Polanco traded to Seattle for right-handed starting pitcher Anthony DeSclafani, right-handed relief pitcher Justin Topa, outfield prospect Gabriel Gonzalez, and right-handed pitching prospect Darren Bowne, and cash considerations. Before we do kind of initial reactions, Polanco, obviously one of the longest tenured Twins, absolutely a fan favorite, probably one of the most underrated players in recent Twins history. He is going to slide right into starting second base for the Mariners, who needed infield help. He's making $10.5 million in 2024 with a $12 million club option for 2025. I believe that comes with a $750,000 buyout if that option is not picked up. Without further ado, also want to bring in producer Theo to be a part of this conversation. And just ask you guys, before we dig into all the cogs here, what are y'all initial reactions to this trade? Jeremy, let's start with you, man.
So I guess in a nutshell, for me it was they got a lot for Polanco. And Polanco in the lineup was great. I mean, when the lineup wasn't performing, and then Polanco comes back, and all of a sudden it's better. But this now gives them some flexibility in their lineup to, Buxton can play center, Buxton can DH. Julian's going to play second. You hope Miranda maybe bounces back. That gives you a little bit more flexibility. Farmer's still on the roster. So from
Farmer is staying
for now, right?
For now, yeah. I mean, that's could change.
And so for me, it's offensive. The lineup wise, I don't know that it changes a lot, but you get to add all this depth, right? So maybe the starting pitcher is not a top of the line pitcher, but he's an innings eater. Maybe the relief pitcher is not a closer, but he's going to be an effective mid to late inning guy. You're getting an outfield prospect and a lottery ticket pitching prospect. So you're adding a whole bunch of stuff to the stable of assets if you want to go out and make more moves. And if not, you've just kind of added to the depth of the whole organization. So I think from a Twins fan perspective, yeah, it's going to be tough because Polanco is well liked, but there's more depth now than there was 3 hours ago. And I think that's a win for the Twins.
Yeah,
Theo.
I've already had a couple friends reach out to me like, oh, man, what do you think on this? Well, my opinion is, as Jeremy already iterated to, getting 4 guys back for a player such as Polanco is telling, not only of his caliber and what he's capable of, but also of where this current offseason, both trade and free agency market is at this position. It's been speculated heavily that he would be a top trade target for anyone in need of middle infield help, and that's the case here. Now, are you getting the same caliber of players back for him? Not particularly. DeSclafani being the headliner in this case, and he's probably going to be hurt, as far as I still remember, until about June. So you've got about 2 months of time if the Twins don't decide to flip him, where he's inoperable. But the prospects, I'm excited to dig into them. I've just spent the last 5 minutes finally finding some video of Darren Bowne from a full recorded game in his college days. So we'll look at just the first inning. A little bit. But Gonzalez is intriguing, as we'll get into it later. He may not be here to stay, because he is now, as I saw from MLB.com Twins beat reporter Johan Park. I'll bring this tweet up now. If you can read that, he is pretty much going to fit in as the 4th overall prospect in the Twins system, which is very telling. Puts him behind Rodriguez, Brooks Lee, and Walker Jenkins, of course. And he's, as of right now, in MLB Pipeline's top 100 at number 79. I know it's not a consensus top 100 prospect, but it's a good place to be. And as far as we know, MLB.com is usually the quickest to respond to these trades and shifting these guys in their systems. It still might be within the first 24 hours, but not so immediate for some of the other sites we go to. So I think I like it for the time being. There still could be more moves to be made, but it was foreseeable that Polanco would go, and now this just opens the door up full time at second base for a platoon of Julian.
Yeah, for sure, man. I need to check for myself about DeSclafani's health. I thought he was coming in healthy into the season, but I could be wrong.
I'm going to double check that right now, as I do with everything.
I
but I'm
like
very certain he was starting the season injured.
Can you check? I think Doogie just tweeted something about this not too long ago, that it sounded like he would be full go by opening day. But at the end of the day, I mean, what he threw 160 some innings last year, 107.
99.
2 years ago then?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
A couple years ago.
That was his really good year. And so I think he, at a minimum, you've added depth that if he's not available, and in April, how many days off do you have, right? So is that 5th starter certainly always necessary? But from a depth perspective, I really like it, even though I don't think he's more than a 4 or 5. What does that say?
Mm-hmm.
Is expected to be ready?
Yeah. Last thing I saw, which probably was in November, on him specifically, said maybe. So
Right on.
But Wolfson's got the immediate sources, so we'll take his word for it.
100%. Yeah, before we dig into the guys, the guys in a little bit more depth, I feel like I've seen some like mixed reactions to this on Twitter already, and I think like maybe it's helpful to kind of put a label on this trade, right? This to me is like a value trade, right? Where the outcome is about accruing value and not necessarily about adding immediate impact. And we'll dig into this more later around like what do the Twins still need to do to be a legit postseason threat, because I think we're all aligned that there are more moves that need to be made. Look at Jeremy trying to multitask and watch the Thunder game while we're talking about this. There are more moves that need to be made here, but it's hard to argue with the amount of value that the Twins got for, Polanco, a second baseman, not a great defender, on the wrong side of 30, pretty significant injury history at this point. So let's talk about the guys one by one. We'll start with the major league pieces. So DeSclafani was just acquired by the Mariners from the Giants in the trade that sent Robbie Ray from Seattle to San Francisco. He's making $12 million in 2024. He's a free agent at the end of this season. Anyone can correct me if you have more up-to-date information, but my understanding is that Seattle is paying down some of his salary. $6 million that they acquired from the Giants in the Robbie Ray trade is going straight to Minnesota, and potentially some additional funds too. And I believe, and Theo, I feel like you'll be the most plugged into this. Dan Hayes tweeted out already that the Falvey suggested that the Minnesota Twins expect to reinvest that money that Seattle sent back into the 2024 roster.
Yeah, I believe that is exactly what Dan sent out. I can, of course, pull that tweet up later if we need the clarification, but that response, I saw Doe also followed up to that saying they're possibly going to be looking at adding the right-handed bat problem and addressing that with these extra money. So what that could mean, probably an extra outfielder, your Adam Duvall's, your Tommy Phams, but that's later down the line. But focusing on DeSclafani now, his whole career has been very injury prone. I mean, being a part of the 2021 Giants, who were just a complete surprise of veteran players coming together. That was his last best season, as I will pull up his baseball reference page right now. The last 2 years, kind of hit or miss. I mean, 2022 was a huge injury prone year. Last year wasn't as bad, but as you can see, he's only been over 180 innings once in his entire career, and that was almost 9 years ago now. Crazy to think about. So it fills depth, but not to the caliber they need.
But that's sure. But is that a problem when you're going to pay this guy a maximum of $6 million?
Yeah. So let's talk DeSclafani's overall numbers, and then we're gonna hit that question because I think that's kind of the crux of it, right? So 33 years old, right-handed pitcher, only pitched 99 innings in 2023, accrued about 1 F/WAR, has been a 3-win pitcher in the past, but as Theo mentioned, pretty injury prone. 18.9 K percentage, that's pretty poor. Excellent control, 4.8. 4.8% walk rate. Sinker slider guy threw a slider 45% of the time last year. Sinker 27%, fastball 13, changeup 10, and curve 5. So here's my question to you guys. And I feel like this is the $1 million question that I've heard from everybody so far. Do you guys think this is all the Twins are doing to bolster their rotation? Because there is no question that DeSclafani is a back end innings eating type of caliber arm. He is not an impact starting pitcher. What do you guys think?
If this is the only move that they make between now and August 1st, that would be disappointing, right?
Mm-hmm.
If it's the only move they make between now and April 1st, I think there'll be people that are disappointed, but I don't necessarily think that they don't have a huge hole in their rotation. Now we're assuming Chris Paddock is able to pitch a full season.
Mm-hmm.
Pablo Lopez was phenomenal. Write him in pen, number 1 guy. Bailey Ober was really good last year and is young and can still improve. Joe Ryan gave up a lot of home runs, but if you're talking about Joe Ryan as a number 4 starter, I think that's really good, right? And then you have an innings eater that's got experience and has pitched well, although not often well. Mm-hmm. You have Louis Varland. You have your guy David Festa. You have Simeon Woods Richardson. There's depth. And so the fact that you can just slot this guy in, it's just as good. It's better than the Dylan Bundys, the Chris Archers.
For sure.
And so if this is the only move they make between now and opening day, I don't hate it. If this is the only move that they make between now and game 1 of the ALDS, well, that could become a problem.
I don't think that's going to be happening, and I would love to say maybe he's an innings eater, but I would not call him the Chad's inning eater that the Foolish Baseball YouTube channel has phenomenally dubbed as of this last season. He's no Jordan Lyles, I'll say that, but I think he serves a better purpose as, an upgrade to what Dallas Keuchel was last season. I just want to pull up the Baseball Savant page because it's pretty to look at. Not so much with all the blue, but that walk percentage is the standout. I think we can all agree. So getting someone with control, because we don't know what Chris Paddock's season will be like, and maybe it's a platoon rotation spot between the two of them. depending how things play out. I do believe they will still get another starter. I know I'm very confident my mock trade could still be a reality right now. Not saying that it will be, but I think it's realistic with Gonzalez coming in this trade package as well, because he could benefit Atlanta a lot.
Going hard after that still. I love it.
DeSclafani has to fit into either the number 5 or the long man, right?
You would think so.
He's going to be one of the 13. Maybe that gives the Twins the ability to do something different with Varland if they want to. But I think if he gives you 18 starts, if he gives you more than that, the numbers aren't fantastic. He's not going to strike out a lot, but you could do worse in a number 5 starter.
Absolutely. I just want to pull up Fangraph's depth chart now that the acquisition has been made. They have him, I think, 6th there.
That's fair.
Right. He's better than Cole Sands, so sign me up.
So
that's a low bar. Sorry, Cole Sands.
It's the bar that we had to clear for opening day last year. We didn't clear it, and he spent time on the roster.
Here's the thing I think that brings us into sharp relief, no pun intended. So at the Athletic today, Saris released his top 150 starting pitchers by Stuff Plus, which is great and highly recommend everyone reads that. But so the Twins are really well represented there, right? As you might expect. So they have, I think Simeon Woods Richardson was there at 145, and then they had all the other 5-6 guys, Varland, etc. Pablo was I don't want to ruin this for people, but Pablo was right around the top 10. But then their next cluster of guys, Paddock, Ober, and Joe Ryan, were in that kind of 40-ish range. And I think that's a good illustration of kind of what we're talking around here, right? Which is that I think we should feel confident going into the regular season if this is the Twins pitching group. But I don't think I would feel super confident going into a playoff series if it's Pablo number 1. Then I'm feeling really uncertain about who's going to start a second game and be effective in a best of 3 wild card series, because I'm assuming the Twins aren't getting a bye.
And I don't disagree, but I think for the Twins to go deep, Ober or Ryan or Paddock have to step up. And it's not going to be that they don't go deep because DeSclafani is their number 5. And so who knows what happens between now and then, but being able to add a depth piece for cheap to me is a win. And so do you have, one of you guys will have this, how good is his slider?
Whose?
DeSclafani.
He throws it 45% of the time. He doesn't walk people, which suggests to me that he can manipulate the ball pretty well, but he doesn't miss a lot of bats. Something's fishy there. If you're throwing your slider 45% of the time, what's the deal? So don't just have it. Explain it to me too.
Okay, so the batting average off his slider this last season was 257, expected batting average 266, slugging 429, WOBA 308. I think hitters can just see it coming pretty well. That would be my indication of all that. Sorry, I should not be scrolling up so you guys can look at the numbers. I don't know what's its average miles per hour there, 87. That's probably why it's hittable every once in a while.
But an 87 mile an hour slider, what's his fast? I can't see what his fastball is. What's his fastball?
93.
So maybe he just needs to slow that down. Maybe there needs to be some more. So I don't know, but I do know that the Twins have been able to locate or to identify people that have usable traits as pitchers, and then turn them into very usable traits as Twins pitchers. And we don't know what the plan is for him.
For sure.
So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt because they have hit on players like this. And at a minimum, if he throws 99 innings and makes 18 starts and is a replacement level starter, we take that.
So it's interesting that you mentioned that, what is going to be the plan? One, and this will transition us nicely to Justin Topa because we should move on because DeSclafani is not that interesting.
10 minutes worth, he is.
I think Twins fans are so starved for content this offseason they won't care. But both of the major league pieces that they picked up in this trade are sinker slider guys, and I think that's interesting. The sinker just posted its first positive league-wide value in like 1 billion years. And so that's one thing I'm interested in and kind of monitoring. But let's talk about Topa a little bit. 30. I says 34. That's not right though.
He is turning 33 on March 7th.
Okay. Turning 33, 6'4", 200, not a free agent until 2027. So he's in his first year of ARB. Another sinker slider guy, sinker 45%, slider 30. Also has a cutter and a changeup. Had a really great year for Seattle last season. Expected ERA of 2.93. 22% K rate. That's much more healthy than DeSclafani's 6.5 walk rate. That's really strong too. And so it feels like let's make a huge leap in assumption, which is probably extremely foolish, and assume that Topa's going to like roughly replicate what he did last season. This is a guy you're sliding into what part of the bullpen, Jeremy? Where do you think he's going?
I think you have Duran at the top, right?
Yep.
You have Jax and Stewart, and then you have Topa. And I think that's for as fickle as relief pitchers are, if that's who you get out of this deal. I also think you have Jorge Alcala, who could be back to what he was. And then you have your lefties, right? So if he's a 6th inning guy, I think he can be a really good 6th inning guy if he, like you said, can replicate this, because he's 2 years removed from throwing 3 innings as a Brewer and giving up 11 earned runs. So there's some things there. But after what Theo says, I like what you told me before we started, because that's spot on.
I mean, it is a better acquisition than any of their other bullpen pieces so far this offseason, and it's no disrespect to Josh Stoumount, but Stoumount's coming back from an injury that's incredibly hard to overcome. So Topa brings that optimistic outlook. I think if we're looking at just upside, and we can look at the much prettier Baseball Savant page than
there we go.
DeSclafani's, I think there's a real possibility he could be better than Brock Stewart this season if we're only looking at upside.
Woo.
That is quite the claim, but he had a lot more of a workload in the majors this season compared to the majority of Brock Stewart's career. That's where I'm coming from.
Yeah. But like even having that conversation that we're having of like the names that you're comparing him to, like feels like a big positive for the Twins. No, right? Like their recent bullpen acquisitions, like Stoumount is a good example. It's like, how many guys have they claimed off waivers and or signed to minor league deals with an invite to camp? Hobie Minor and a gazillion other guys this season who you're hoping like one guy maybe makes it through that kind of gauntlet and comes out as a major league bullpen contributor. So the fact that we're like pitching a guy now into essentially like the Emilio Pagan role.
Yeah. The Jorge Lopez and who they traded Jorge Lopez for, and like you said, Emilio Pagan, who everyone hated. You've just upgraded that spot as a throw-in, right? How fast? How hard does he throw? What's his? Can you find that for me?
Like 95, right?
His Scroll on down. 95 on the sinker. I will try to highlight that if you can see it.
That's gonna be great.
It'll work.
And then his slider is much slower at 82. Changeup 86.
And I'm guessing that slider is not going to be 82 when the Twins start working with them. I'm guessing it's going to be heavier, harder than that.
Yeah.
Right, because you're looking at about 10. That's your ideal, right? About 10 miles an hour difference.
Mm-hmm.
So if you pick that up and all of a sudden he becomes, if he's throwing 95, 85, and he's 32, so he's not exactly going to give you something that he hasn't. But if he's your 6th inning guy and he is what he was last year, certainly there could be regression because we saw an all-star closer become a terrible relief pitcher and then get shipped off for nothing. But it's one more dart that you could throw at the dartboard and a dart that was really good last year.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. Okay. Anyone got anything else on the two major league guys before we talk prospects?
It's kind of the name of the show. We should.
That's
move on to
right.
prospects.
That's right. Let's go. Okay. So we'll do kind of take the same approach here. We'll do a little high level overview on these guys, and then we'll dig into some questions around them. So I think the prospect headliner in this trade is Gabriel Gonzalez. He is a 20-year-old right-handed outfielder. He is listed at 5'10", 170 something. That is not his height and weight. He is like 6 foot 215, 220. He is listed as the number 79 overall prospect per pipeline on their just release list. Now, conversely, he is not listed on Baseball America's top 100. He is not listed on the BP top 101. Baseball America has him at number 5 overall in a system that's like pretty comparable to the Twins, I think, right? So a system that's like between 15th and 20th overall. Originally, I believe he was a international prospect signee out of Venezuela for about $1 million, $1.5 million signing bonus. So, what did his year look like last season? Over 2 levels of A ball, he hit 291, 361, 476. That's good for 837 OPS with 18 home runs, 142 hits overall. That was second most in the Mariners system, even though he struggled much more when he moved up to high A. I think an adjustment there is pretty normal. So that's some of the good. Conversely, per an Aaron Layton tweet, 90th percentile exit velo, 101.5. That is light. That is light hitting. 37% chase rate. That's a little bit of an orange flag. But I'll say this. 2 more things before I turn it over to you guys. One, it is abundantly clear that the Twins have seen something in Gonzalez's data in his profile that they really, really like. And the other thing that I would offer is it's also important to remember the organizations that we're talking about here, right? Seattle, not necessarily a great recent track record with developing hitters. The Twins do have a pretty solid recent track record with developing hitters. So as you said, Jeremy, to some of the major league kind of components of this, I would tend to trust the Twins and their eye here. Where are you guys ranking him on a Twins prospect list? And I realize this is putting folks like really, really on the spot. And I don't even know if kind of industry folks have weighed in on that, but I'm curious for you guys, like initial instincts.
So for me, Jenkins is 1 easily. Lee's 2 easily, right? Not super close to Jenkins, but 2 easily.
Mm-hmm.
Erod is 3. And then Gonzalez for me is 4, and a lot closer to Erod than maybe most people would put him. Because I think the floor here is higher than Erod's because he does make contact. There's certainly some question marks, but he's a contact guy, right? And and you get to AA and you strike out all the time. What are you going to do? You strike out all the time. And so he doesn't strike out, right? He struck out in 16% of his plate appearances. He didn't hit great after his promotion, but there's still plenty of time for that. He's going to be a right fielder, right? Because he's got an arm. He doesn't move great. The power you're hoping on, but I think the floor is there. So I put him solidly at 4. But most importantly, now the Twins have an extra trade chip. And I've always assumed it was Erod. But now they have that. And again, you added depth, you added a relief piece, and now you've added a prospect trade chip who you said you used the word headliner, but I don't know if you used like a trade headliner. He's the best piece of this return for the Twins, right? A borderline top 100 prospect who comes in and should rank in the top 5 and has a chance to be really, really good. And if you follow like Chris Crawford, who's a big Mariners fan, he's like the trade, don't love losing this guy. And when a Mariners fan says that, that's when you're like, hey, that's good for the Twins.
Yep.
And so that's where I'm at with him.
How about you, Theo?
Well, you're going to get a lot more insight on this from Jeremy because my homework is literally just looking some of this stuff right now. On paper, what I'm seeing stat-wise, I really like it. Like Jeremy said, the contact type hitter, you need it. And it's, I don't know if it complements what Rodriguez brings in the minor leagues, where he's got such great command of the strike zone, but he's taking every corner pitch he can. And from what I'm seeing, just based off his numbers, Gonzalez is not that type of hitter. He is going to, if it's close enough and he feels confident to swing at it, he's going to. And now I will bring up some footage, which I was able to find on YouTube.
Oh, look at you go.
Again, this is why you guys keep me around. Gonzalez. So, it might be a little loud, but
if you're listening to audio, we are watching some highlights, so this might sound boring.
It's quite a hack.
Yes.
Yeah, it is.
But I want to look at this batting stance more than anything else. That's a pitch, borderline, not bad.
Yeah, he looks the part. Right? That's a pretty nice swing.
So,
warning track power. Yeah, but you know what? You know what he's not doing, Jamie? He's not swinging and missing.
So hold on though. Let's bin his footage for a minute. Let's talk a little bit more about his tools, because I do think there's like a little nuance right behind. Like, I actually don't want to characterize him as a hit first guy. I think he has two carrying tools, right? It's power. He has plus power. He has at least a plus arm. I'm reading that he had 12 outfield assists in 88 games on defense last year, which is great. When I dug, and I'll get a piece up at Twins Daily tomorrow, digging more into these guys' data. But when I took a quick glance, the contact, like you said, Jeremy, was good, but the chase rate is kind of the orange flag, right? So the question is going to be, he has at least solid bat to ball skills. Can he refine his approach such that he's not expanding the zone? Because like on that footage that Theo just pulled up, I mean, he took a swing at everything. So I think that's going to be the really interesting question there. He really did slow down when he adjusted up to high A. Yep. Even though he was super young for that level, but I think that's going to be, if there is one, that's going to be like the limiting factor here is swing decisions, and that's, I think, the thing that I'll be monitoring most closely with him moving forwards.
And if he's swinging at pitches that you can't do much with, which
right,
he's a high chase rate would suggest that's what he's doing, but he's got good contact rates. I
think it was 75% from what I saw.
So he's hitting solid. Bad balls. Well, you're not going to hit bad balls super hard, right? And I know that probably doesn't impact his 90th percentile exit velocity, but at the same time, if he can just be more selective, I think that bodes well. Because you say he's got these powers as tool, but what do you have for home runs last year?
18.
Yeah, that ain't bad.
And 84 runs batted in to complement that. That's, I know a lot of people are like, RBI doesn't matter anymore. It matters. You need a guy who can drive and run.
84 RBIs, 89 strikeouts, and 36 walks. So I like him as a prospect, and I think the floor is higher than Erod's. I think the ceiling's not as high, but he's going to start the year in Cedar Rapids, and Erod will start the year in AA, right? And they may play together.
Yep.
But it's just another asset. It's another thing in the prospect stable, which is, to me, is huge, because you got rid of Polanco, and you're adding, which makes me like this trade more as I talk about it.
Yep. So I think a couple of final thoughts on him, and I agree with a lot of what you said, right? It's a slightly different offensive profile to some of the others they have at the top of their system. And I think I generally agree with you. I think you can probably make an argument that he's somewhere in the 4 to 6 range, right? In the Twins system now. definitely at the moment a half step above the like Schobel, Keishel kind of middle infield type hitter that's next after the Twins' big three. Even though he's not ranked right on BA, on Baseball Prospectus, I know Kyler McDaniel hasn't released his prospects yet. Fangraphs hasn't released their updated list. I think it's probably safe to say that he's like a consensus like top 125-ish guy, right? So like he's in the next quadrant, if he's not on the top 100 list, of guys whose year is going to determine whether they become a kind of back end top 100 guy or not. So certainly an interesting profile for the Twins. We'll be very interested to see if they keep him and a right-handed outfield bat in a system that doesn't have a ton of those. So,
well, let me pose this question to you guys now. With Gonzalez being in the system, who would you feel more comfortable trading away, him or Erod, for before opening day for additional help if you need to?
Who would I feel more comfortable trading? I would feel more comfortable trading Gonzalez because I'm not attached to him in any way. I think Erod is going to net you a bigger return. I feel like, and we've like it's like a ridiculous joke at this point that me and Jeremy are on opposite sides of the Erod like kind of fan spectrum in terms of if we think he's going to hit or not. But I think thinking about the other top guys is a really important factor here. I feel pretty confident in what Brooks Lee is going to produce at the major league level, and I feel pretty confident that despite being a young prep prospect, that Walker Jenkins is possibly going to be in contention to be the number 1 overall prospect in baseball a year from now. And so that makes me feel more confident in trading Erod. But I would feel more comfortable trading Gonzalez. I think you're getting a better return for Erod.
Yeah, and I'm gonna cop out and say I'm just more comfortable trading a prospect away now.
For sure.
Whether that's Erod or Gonzalez, I'm more comfortable saying, yeah, let's do that because it was an addition that you can now afford to lose because you didn't have it before.
Yeah.
I'm not trading Walker Jenkins.
No one is.
I probably wouldn't want to trade Brooks Lee unless I'm getting a stud. But if a team prefers Erod, great. If a team prefers Gonzalez, great. Right now, Gabriel Gonzalez, according to MLB, who's probably the high, right? We'll agree that they're the high on him.
Sure.
Drew Jones is ranked 1 spot ahead of him.
Okay.
Like, these are Spencer Jones is 84. Like these are really good prospects.
Sure.
And even though it's one place, like he's well liked. Somebody has to really like him in the industry for MLB to say he's the 79th rated prospect.
For sure.
And
yeah,
that's important.
I mean, if we're throwing names out there, he's 2 behind Justin Crawford, Carl Crawford's son, who's been highly ranked in the Philly system, which says more. You guys know where I'm going to go with this. I think this only strengthens my passion for Bryce Elder to become a Twin and keep that mock trade exactly the same. The infield and outfield depth has only been bolstered, so why not? And I think another thing we can touch on a little bit is what this means for Brooks Lee and the Twins infield depth as well. It's something I will be writing about for Twins Daily during the week, but you got a lot of platoon options for everywhere except shortstop for the most part when you come to think about it, because it gives more flexibility for Julian to platoon with Kirilloff at first base, and then Julian, Farmer, and hell, even Royce at second base, and the same thing with Farmer, Royce, and eventually Lee when his time comes to get called up at third base. So I kind of like how it frees it up the Twins infield a little bit more depth chart wise and flexibility of, hey, let's plug this guy in so we can have this other guy take his needed rest for the week.
So I'm really glad you brought up Brooks Lee because that is really interesting. And I know Thad Levine did a radio spot a couple of days ago, right? Where he basically, it was like suddenly out of nowhere in desperation for Twins news. That was a tweet from Morosi or somebody that was like, Brooks Lee is going to start the season in AAA. And then those quotes from Thad Levine, who we haven't heard from in ages, by the way, saying, whenever he's ready to come to the majors, like he'll let us know and he'll be up there. And that felt really like either you're kind of like puffing his trade value or you're saying what it actually is, and it certainly feels like the latter right now, that he's on the doorstep of the majors. The Twins think he's going to be like a really solidly impactful player at the major league level, and we are going to see plenty of Brooks Lee at Target Field in 2024. All right, let's talk about the last piece in the trade. I think people will think that this is the most uninteresting player, but the more I read and learn about Darren Bowne, the more and more intrigued I am getting. So Darren Bowne, a 13th round pick in the 2022 draft out of UNC Pembroke. Now, 2022 draft is the draft in which the Twins took their entire Cedar Rapids rotation. And so I'm really interested if he was someone they had their eye on in that class. 6'3", kind of a wiry looking guy, 180 pounds, 22 years old. He struck out 59 and 55 innings at A-ball last year, but walks too many. The Mariners did have him mostly in a starting role. His fastball is up to 98, but sits more in that like 93 to 95 range, up to 19 inches of induced vertical break. That will play really well at the top of the zone. Also has a two-seamer, a low 80 sweeper, more of a like fringy kind of change up. Some of the grades I saw on his pitches, fastball and slider, both 50, 55, so above average. Also looks like he's experimented in adding a cutter. So curious. And anyone have any thoughts on Bowne? Jeremy, like I'm curious for your take, because we've talked a lot about this 2022 Twins pitching draft class has already been really impactful and exciting to track. What are your thoughts on Bowne so far? I know we're just kind of digging in for the first time.
So a couple things. For one, when you can add someone with upside, right? A lottery ticket type, that's always fun to do because there's no risk, right? Worst case scenario is he doesn't pan out. You've lost nothing. You've invested little into him. You've invested nothing into him. But I did read, and I don't know who it was, or I think it was a tweet that said he was the best athlete in the Mariner system. And so when you have that as a trait, I feel like that makes the ceiling that much higher. Where's the floor here? The floor is a guy that won't ever do anything. Like, he won't make it to a AA ball. But the Twins have done a really, really good job with getting pitchers from not the big five, right? Not the Power 5 schools. And UNC Pembroke is an excellent example.
Awesome. Yeah, really good. Perfect.
Where you've unearthed a 6'3" athletic dude who can throw at 98, and anything that you can get out of that is going to be the cherry on top of this. So is he going to slide into the end of the top 30? Probably, right? But I mean, you get a top 40 prospect, 22-year-old, that has side. I think you take that. And was this a deal breaker? I wonder how these names get into trades. Right?
I know. I feel like it's like a list, right? And they're like, you can take one of these guys, and it's a list of like 3 names or 5 names from a certain subsection of their system.
Yeah. Or the Twins are like, hey, we want this Bowne kid in the Mariners. Like, you can have him.
Okay.
Right. So I just, it's interesting. He'll be an A-ball, and he's going to have to not walk people. But if he can throw 98 right now, and now you refine his skills a little bit,
and
all of a sudden you have this 6'3", 180-pound athlete throwing 102.
Yeah.
That changes things.
I don't know about 102. So
if he's a starting pitcher right now, and all of a sudden you shorten him up and he starts just throwing gas,
sure,
why not?
Sure, that's real. Yeah, I think the thing that I'm interested in with him is he doesn't exactly fit that Twins draft profile in that area of the draft, right? Because what they've done, and like we talked a bit about the Cedar Rapids rotation, is take guys from smaller schools, like you mentioned, that have something interesting with a view to adding velocity. He already has pretty solid velocity, even if his fastball is sitting like 94, 95, or 93 to 96 range. really good IVB at the top of the zone. Like there's definitely some really interesting traits there. Again,
He gave up
this,
2 home runs in 55 innings.
It's a homerish take, but I really back the Twins developmental folks when targeting guys, and I think that's fair given their success, especially in recent drafts. So I'm also really curious if he was a guy they were potentially interested in this 2022 draft, and it just didn't pan out for whatever reason. I don't exactly remember who the Twins' 13th round pick was in 2022. I'm sure it was a pitcher.
You don't have that committed to memory?
I don't.
You guys gotta have that committed to memory.
It's a struggle.
Gotta go to Baseball Reference to find everything.
For me, like 55 innings, he made 15 starts. He did walk 25, which is too many. 2 home runs, 36 hits.
Huh?
Like his opponent batting average was 182. Like there's certainly things to like in the profile, whether the Twins liked him out of college or not. And
100%.
I don't want to spoil this, but for Tom's next thing that he's doing that I'm going to contribute to, it's a focus on what pitchers.
Better hurry up.
What I know, what pitchers can do, right? What guys can do, and what he can do is throw fire.
Yep.
So the Twins actually made a very smart selection in the 13th round of the 2022 draft. It was C.J. Culpepper.
Okay.
I think anyone's going to argue that.
He's the top 10. He's the top 10 guy in the system now. All right, Theo. So let me bring you back in here and ask you this question because I want to zoom back out. Right. So we've given a little bit of overview over the guys. I'm really interested in kind of like bookending this conversation by talking about where do we think the Twins are going from here this offseason. So if you're putting on your GM hat for a minute, I guess we can divide this question into 2 parts. What do you think they will do between now and opening day? And what do you think they should do between now and opening day? And Jeremy, you're getting that same question next. So begin your prep.
Again, we know what I think they should do on the pitching front. Matt Trueblood came up to me during the winter meltdown and said, after I sat and listened to that episode, it really grew on me. I can't remember if it was him who exactly said this or someone else we were speaking to, but he said, and Matt corrects me if I'm wrong later on, the Braves only make trades that they want to make. So I don't know if that will happen.
Did he say this like that, or did he say it? Was he slurring?
He was not slurring.
Okay.
This was early in the night. This was before Matt Walker and
Jeremy?
Louis Verland were on the stage. Okay. We'll put it that way. The realistic thing with what we've just been learning in the last, I'd say, 2 hours at this point, with this money that's coming along, that they have this extra little surplus, which is saying something for a team that has a very heavy self-imposed budget, which is probably going to move from like 125 million to 132 million with the surplus money coming over. They got to get that right-handed bat, that older guy who's probably not going to be a full-time outfielder, but can platoon with Wallner and Kepler. That could be, Cole Calhoun's a left-handed hitter. Yes, he is. So yeah, Tommy Pham, A.G. Pollock, Adam Duvall. Those are great names.
Duvall, for sure. Good shout.
I think everyone's been wanting Duvall for the last 2 years. But yeah, I think that's the realistic thing they got to go for now. And platoon, mentorship-wise, whoever fits that role best, that's what you go for. And I think we will see that sort of signing, kind of like we saw Donovan Solano this last offseason. Well, last year going into spring training. So whoever they get for that extra hitter, I think it's going to be a week or two into spring training.
Right on. I like all that. What are your thoughts, Jeremy? What do you want them to do? What do you think they should do? Or what do you think they will do? Excuse me.
Well, I'm the guy that told you 3 months ago that nothing was going to happen, right? So what I think they will do is not a whole lot unless guys get to the point where they're scraping for a 1-year deal, and then the Twins will get active. The name that I mentioned to you earlier was Jorge Soler. I'm just a fan of his. And like you told me, he's probably too expensive. But I like the idea of him in this lineup. And I don't know if that's possible from a money perspective. I do think it's possible from a lineup perspective. And that to me is something that they need. the names that you kind of threw out to me earlier, I was like, and Solaire's just a name that I've always he's always interested me as a potential fit for the Twins, and we'll see. But I like Theo said, it's going to be a couple of weeks, and I certainly believe that to be true. But I do want to circle back to Darren Bowne real quick because I just found this thing, Lookout Landing. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Probably, I don't know, whatever it is, but it's a Mariners thing. And they have Bowen rated as Mariners 23rd prospect. They write a pretty glowing report and then say he's an arm to watch this upcoming season. He's already attracting a lot of attention outside the system among pitching wonks for his pitch data.
Pitching wonks. Great.
So that's the thing. Like he was hurt. He came in. He was impressive.
I was able to find some video from
the Twins locating and then developing has been exceptional. And that's what makes lottery ticket type guys fun. But I think that's what the Twins do. They're going to look for something. And is it speed? Is it power? And add something that they value more that they can get on the cheap compared to other teams. But I honestly do think that if the right deal comes knocking, the Twins will spend money that they don't necessarily expect to spend. We saw it with Correa, right? We saw them add payroll when it wasn't necessarily the time to add payroll. And I just think that with the expected increase in fans, they were good last year. That was extra gate. And hopefully this TV deal comes in more than expected. And the Polettes have been known recently, at least, to approve spending, which is not that's not the narrative that people like on social media. But I think that's the truth. And so I think we could be surprised, but I'm not. It's not going to happen anytime soon. They're gonna wait for prices to come down, and then they make an addition, and maybe it's a Donovan Solano type, maybe it's something more exciting because there's still names out there that are good names, and who's ponying up the money to spend? It doesn't seem like anybody. So why not the Twins?
I also just realized we've been so focused on this trade, we didn't even touch on the biggest news to really come out of Twins Fest, which is Byron Buxton reassuring he's like back to being the full-time center fielder, which means all this depth options with the infield cleared up and Polanco being traded away. That also kind of frees up the DH spot, which I know Jorge Soler would be perfect for that, but right. Adam Duvall can actually still play in the outfield better than Soler at every single position. Mm-hmm. I know we're spitballing and getting close to our hours, but there's a lot to consider here.
Right. And Willie Castro, maybe he plays more.
How can we forget Tom Froman's MVP?
Right. There's a lot of options, and I like it. And there's 4 more quality players in the system. 3 more quality players in the system than there was 3 hours ago, which is good for an organization.
Mm-hmm.
It is really great to actually be able to talk about news. I think my final takeaways from this in terms of the path forwards and just like an overview of this trade are it feels like really good value the Twins got. It doesn't necessarily feel like a ton of impact now, but I do think it's the first of at least one more move. I think the right-handed bat is an absolute certainty. And I think if you want to feel like you can make noise in the postseason, you need a starting pitcher who you can feel confident will give you a good shot in a playoff game. That doesn't have to come before the season starts. Maybe it looks like Corbin Burns at the deadline when the price isn't going to be as outrageous, or something more creative. But I do think you need a starting pitching impact arm at some point between now and, like you said, Jeremy, before the end of the trade deadline. And if they can get all that done, it's going to be an interesting 2024 season for sure.
Will you cry with Tom this year, or when they win some playoff games, or is that?
You can't recapture that moment. You can't really recapture that moment.
That was a once in a lifetime. That really.
But what if it's the World Series?
Well, that's.
I think anything ALCS or later is up for debate.
Yeah, the chances of me being able to afford a ticket for the World Series and get one are limited.
You'll be crying before the game.
Yeah, really. All right. I think we're going to call it a day because we're coming up on an hour. Appreciate you guys in advance for checking this out. Ways that you can support the show. Follow us on Twitter at DTS_pod1. We are also now on YouTube at Destination The Show. Retweet the tweets with the episode. Help us spread the word. We are excited to finally talk Twins news on January 29th. Good Lord.
Or February 1st.
Oh, better late than never. And while we're here, may as well dangle because we are doing a second episode this week. So actually recording tomorrow.
We have 3 episodes this week.
Now we have 2.
I think we're just gonna do 2 now. After
We're not doing Wednesday. Wednesday's out.
Wednesday's out.
Yeah, man. All right.
That's
we
good.
are, however, going to welcome our first ever current prospect guest to the show tomorrow. We'll be recording with Twins pitching prospect Pearson Ole, who had an absolutely sensational 2023 season. So excited to pick his brain about that, about his development in the Twins org and what he's hoping to accomplish in 2024. So stay tuned for that. We'll get this one out as quickly as possible. Thank you guys for checking us out. Always excited to talk Twins. See you soon.